a band. You hear it?
It is necessary for the recording of sound to convert the sound waves to corresponding changes in light. The sound waves produced by my voice are transmitted through the air to the microphone, where these sound waves are converted to changes in an electric current. These variations in the electric current are then amplified and used to control the light. This varying beam of light falling on the photoelectric cell produces variations in the electric current, which are directly proportional to the variations in the light beam. The sound track. As the varying electrical current in the photoelectric cell is small, a vacuum tube amplifier is required to increase it to the point where it will operate a loudspeaker. Soundtrack.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. In this episode, we'll be continuing off this three-part series of Gematria, Numerology, and Ciphers. In the first episode, we pretty much went over Hebrew, English, and Greek Gematria, covered Gematria, and then we also went into Numerology. And what was that word again? I'm so sorry, Lisa, to put you on the spot.
Isopsophy?
Yeah,
Isopsophy. It's a hard word.
Yeah, I'm not trying that one right now. I got plenty of them coming ahead of me in my notes. So, we covered that and kind of, I think, just gave a basic understanding of, like, what's going on with Gematria and Numerology and how it matches up, alphanumerically. And in this episode, we're going to try to kind of go over and cover older stuff. I think in this series, as me and Lisa were kind of, creating it, because I think it kind of took on its own thing by now. This was going to be like one episode, and now it's turning into three. But at some point, we started like coming across like older and older things, and like some of them I had heard of already and forgot about. But I remember being brought up in occultism and amongst the occult communities and circles. And then I was like, you know what? I was like, we should start going back to that, And I think when I started looking more into the people who were responsible for writing these books that I had heard of, I was just like, damn, like they're rather influential and kind of important and almost kind of like maybe got us where we are now in some ways, And these people believed in Gematria, they believed in numerology, they believed in ciphers, they believed in energy and numerical value to letters. And they wrote stuff on all that. And I think, that's interesting. It's very interesting to see people that were into that, how deep it goes, and what they accomplished. And I think that says something right there in a sense. So we're going to kind of go over some older things and older people, older books, older texts. We're going to show a bunch of slides, just like the first episode, and I'm pretty sure the next one for people listening. I highly suggest to check out the video. I think you'll get more out of it, but I'm sure if you listen, you'll still, get something. But I think the visuals definitely help. And I guess we'll get going if you want, Lisa.
Yeah,
I know that
sure.
You're going to be starting it off.
Okay. So we're going to kind of start off back on where I left off with the timeline on the first episode and discuss Liber Abaci. So Liber Abaci, I believe that's how you say it. So just fair warning.
Abaci.
Yeah, Abaci,
Hibachi.
whatever. Yeah, Hibachi. Now that makes me hungry. So
well, you just drop off the H, right?
and it's Hibachi. Yeah. See, there you go.
Yeah.
Who would have known? So it's also known as the Book of Calculation, and it is a very historic manuscript on arithmetic written by the Leonardo of Pisa in 1202. Now, this Leonardo of Pisa is later going to be known to us as Fibonacci. Leonardo was the son of a merchant, and he traveled a lot with his father all over the Mediterranean and the Middle East. And I believe it was when he was in India that he came to study the Hindu-Arabic numeral system, which would later play into this manuscript, the Liber Abaci. So Liber Abaci is considered as one of the first Western books written to describe the Hindu-Arabic numeral system using symbols that look like modern Arabic numerals. And in fact, that is the numeral system that we use today. So a little bit on the spelling of Liber Abaci is that sometimes you'll see that the book is translated to as the Book of Abacus, and that's not correct.
Or it's
because
not
at
the
time,
one most people are thinking of, right? Or is there
Right.
something else?
And I think because you see the word abaci, it looks like abacus, and you think automatically that it's abacus. And at the time when it was written, abacus was used to refer to calculations in any form. But when Leonardo wrote it, he spelled it with a double B, A-B-B-A-C-I, and used the two B's in the original manuscript. And that denoted that the calculations he was referring to in that manuscript was specifically using the Hindu Arabic numerals. And I'll tell you why all this is really important, because you're thinking, like, why are we discussing this? So this book discusses methods on doing calculations without the use of the abacus. It's been described as a very thorough write-up on the Hindu Arabic numerals, algebraic methods, problems advocated, and so forth. And they use specifically the digits 0 through 9. And this is something that's kind of found throughout with all the Semitic languages and then the languages that evolved from there. So just for context, going back to the timeline, up until this time, around the 1200s, Europe is still using the Roman numerals. And all the advancements in modern mathematics were kind of stalled, and it was proving impossible to evolve beyond that. Now with the book, Liber Abaci, it addressed the mathematical applications that could be used for both commercial tradesmen and mathematicians, and it just proved that it was superior to the one that was being used at the time. But here's the I guess the conflict on that while it served to contribute to the decimal numerals, Liber Abaci was the pivotal moment in history when the modern world at that time switched from an alphanumerical system to now Arabic numerals. So when we talked about how Hebrew or Jewish mysticism or Greek isopsephy were using or pairing the alphabet with numbers and using them interchangeably, that was taking on a life of its own. With the writing of, or with the publication of Liber Abaci, the Western civilization, modern world of that time decide to make the switch. And that's why we don't use alphanumeric systems today, because of the switch over during this time. And you had, your dissonance, like the people that were following, the old way were the Abbasists, and they didn't want to change over. But the people that were going to change over to this new Liber Abaci became known as the algorithmists, which I thought that was weird, the whole algorithmists. So I think it's important to make a mental note of this with the Fibonacci manuscript. So around this time, 12th, 13th century, imagine everybody's talking to each other. The Jewish mystics, the Greek people, the Arabics, all of them are talking to each other, and they're kind of having like a mini pre-party to the Renaissance. So Renaissance started like 14th century or whatever, but everybody's talking to each other. You're seeing all of these like really great texts come out of Spain, Italy, Egypt, Greece, Middle East, and it's some of the most extensive texts even today on Jewish mysticism, Greek isopsephy, and Arabic Islamic mysticism. So when this happens, and you have this adoption of a new system, this system seems to go away or almost underground. And it kind of sets it up nicely that now only a select few know of alphanumerical systems, and the rest of the world takes off in a totally different direction with this separation of the alphabet and the numbers. So I think it's kind of
it's like
interesting.
A schism, right?
I think so, and the main part about it is that most of these people that were combining the alphabet together with numbers, they were talking about how it was a way to have a direct path to speak with God or the divine. And now by separating the two, you're almost launching into a new way of a centralized middleman operation of you have to come through me to talk to God. You can't do it on your own. Or at least that's how I'm interpreting it with all this. I know it's just a switching of mathematics, but I think it was so much more, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it even seems to, like, thinking about stuff that we have, shown each other and sent each other and looked at, and just conversations about, kind of like things like that happening. I mean, going back to, we were talking about Phoenician language. And then how that split off into three
different ones.
And then you're talking about now again the separation of, I guess letters and numbers from each other.
Absolutely.
So it's I do see, I guess you can see a constant separation and split off maybe from the one original source, I guess.
But I think you said it perfectly.
I'm not saying
it's
Phoenician's original. I'm just saying.
No. But you said it perfectly. There's a schism, and it's weird how.
I think you keep seeing it though.
Yeah, and now with social media, you're seeing all of this Fibonacci over and over again, and it's are they launching us into a new system again? I mean, it almost is are we going through this, all over again? And I think I mentioned to you was a side fact was that the Fibonacci, sequence is used to denote patterns in nature and leaf growth and tree growth and what have you. And if you believe in fossils, if you look at some of the old fossils, the old trees and leaf systems do not follow the Fibonacci sequence. So I thought that's kind of something to kind of mention as a side thing. So you have this happening around early 1200s, and I think that's important to kind of keep in mind. Okay, everything was kind of merging, everybody was talking to each other, then you have this happen. Okay, so switching gears to the Arabic side of it all.
And I do think that's I hate to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
But I think this might even be something that you're going to say yourself.
No, go ahead.
I do think when it comes to stuff like this, even with occultism and magic, there is not enough eyes on Arabic shit. My opinion.
Agreed.
I think that's for a reason. I even do think, this is just my opinion, just my theory, but I even do think that might be some of the more deeper embedded secrets inside the OTO. Might be kind of off from that. That's just my opinion, and I think it's just interesting. It's even something that me and you had noticed, even getting into this stuff. You actually don't have a ton of info on that stuff like you do with everything else.
Right. No, I agree.
But yet, some of the oldest stuff you can find from there.
Yeah. No.
Or translations of that stuff, of Arabic.
I mean, it could be, and I think I mentioned it, it could be an artifact of the fact that most of the Arabic stuff hasn't been translated to, English or a language that most other civilizations utilize. But at the same time, why not? Everything else has been translated. Why the...
If they understood, this is just my opinion, when you want to start talking about letters and possible equaling symbolism or energy and this and that, just as my opinion, if you decided to call your language Arabic, starting it with an A, you're already making a statement, in my opinion.
I think so. Yeah.
Same thing, and just not to, same thing with India
or
Indian. I even think, there's a lot of mysticism in that I think is misunderstood, and I even think the I, again, is even playing into saying something, making a statement about that.
Well, remember we discussed how, when they were forming these letters, they were wanting it to sound like what it looked like.
Yes. All right.
So, okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good. This is really good. I'm glad because it plays into what I'm going to say in a little bit. So Abjad numerals, I want to discuss Abjad numerals before I get into a book to kind of give you a little bit of back history because I didn't spend a whole lot of time on the timeline. And like Nick was saying, it's very important that we cover this, and not a whole lot of people are covering it. And so I thought it would be interesting to cover. So Abjad numerals are akin to Hebrew Gematria or Greek isopsephy. Abjad numerals is a decimal alphabetical numeral system that was created in the 8th century using the alphanumeric code by using the 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet, and they assigned them to numerical values. And we saw this with the Hebrew language, and we saw this with the Greek language. The reason I found it significant to mention is that this ancient numeral system has been found to be encoded in the Quran. Again, we saw that it was encoded in the Torah and other religious texts, and now you're seeing it also being encoded in the religious texts in Islam. Abjad, and if I'm saying that wrong, I apologize. Abjad, which means alphabet, is a bit of an acronym in that it derives its first four letters, A, B, J, D, of the Semitic alphabet. And remember, we talked about how the alphabet started with the Proto-Canaanite and then morphed into the Phoenician, like you were saying earlier, and then it split into three. It split into the pre-Hebrew, or the Aramaic, and then the Greek, and then the Arabic. So that's where you have your three, which is kind of weird that you have that three concept going on again. And it numbered the letters 1 through 9 at intervals of 10. The same thing with the Greek and the same thing with the Hebrews. The order of A, B, J, D is not of Arabic origin. And if we talked about going through it in the first episode, because the Abjad numeral system dates back to the Phoenician alphabet and can be compared to the Hebrew, where you have Aleph, Beth, Gimel, Daleth. The Greek has Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta. And then we see that Abjad has Aleph, Ba, Jim, Dal. So it's very similar. I mean, it's almost identical. And then you have the numbering of them throughout. So these Arabic Abjad numerals can be compared and are similar to almost all the other types of alphanumerical codes in Hebrew and Greek. So in regards to the alphanumeric system encoded in the Quran, going back to me mentioning that, there is a concept called the mathematical miracle of the Quran, which I thought that was interesting, MM. And it shows that every letter, word, verse in the Quran is mathematically linked. It is said that in the Quran there are 99 attributes or names of Allah, with the 100th being Allah in the Quran. And each attribute or name has its own numerical value. There was a quote that went on to describe that: how could an illiterate man who lived 1400 years ago have encoded this chapter with Abjad numerals? And I put up an example here to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So the geometrical value of all the odd words, the first word, the third word, the fifth word, is equal to the geometrical value of all the odd letters, which is weird.
Yeah.
And then if you can do that with you can do the same thing with the even words, in that the geometrical value of all even words is equal to that of the geometrical value of all even letters. It's just weird. Like, who would have designed it that way? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem like it was, I don't know. That's a lot of thought.
Yeah.
A lot of math, for sure. So in Islam, there is like you have Jewish mysticism, you have Greek, or you have Jewish Kabbalah, you have Greek isopsophy or whatever. In the Islamic tradition or Islamic mysticism, there's a thing called Sufi or Sufi tradition. And the Sufi tradition in these Islamic texts, especially with the Quran words, they state that it contains an outward meaning as well as a veiled one. Again, the same talk, like going through the Jewish Gematria. And so these hidden meanings reveal a certain truth that's missed when you're just reading the surface of the text. And therefore, these Sufis invest like enormous amount of study in these holy books. And they go on to say the 99 names of God are also a focus to them, because they believe that this is how that you can access spiritual power through contemplating the 99 names, as well as be able to be the go-to, like the medium person between the two worlds. That's something that I thought that I would show. And on this graph, so you could see how like 1 and 2 should go along with the Hebrew and the Greek, and then how it compares to the gematria value, and then that example with the even number of words and the even number of letters. So the significant text that I'm going to talk about is kind of a big deal in Islamic mysticism. And it was written by Ahmed al-Buni, and he was an Algerian Sufi scholar. Ahmed al-Buni authored what would become one of the most controversial books for many centuries in the Middle East. And I think they quote it as being super dangerous. Don't read it. It's, all kinds of shadow banned by the Islamic faith. Al-Buni was a Sufi Muslim theologian, mystic, mathematician, and philosopher. I was going to say that majority of these people that wrote these texts, they're all mathematicians, right? They're all like into math. They know math very well.
Yes. And
they're making super contributions. And it's just a side question. Are all occultists, great mathematicians? Like, is there like a requirement that you should be well versed in mathematics? That's just me
I think
naively
you should,
asking.
but just from my experience in, I guess in like the magic, ceremonial magic, and even amongst like, I guess, witchcraft community, there's a huge part of people that don't even acknowledge the number stuff anyway.
Oh, I see.
So,
Okay.
I couldn't tell you if they're good at math or not because they're not messing with this stuff. So.
It seems like a big deal.
No, believe it or not,
these people.
What's actually is surprising to me is like it's probably blown off just as much as it is in the conspiracy community.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
but
interesting.
if you were to see what they were doing or what they thought was magic or what they thought was witchcraft, you'd understand why. It's so simple-minded. Why would you even want to start including math and shit?
Numbers were everything to these people.
That sound like a dick, but
yeah.
No,
like
sure, lighting a candle and just asking for just to get laid or a couple of bucks. Use a couple of fucking oils and a few crystals. And
you're only asking for simple things
witch.
at that point. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was born in Buna, Algeria, but spent a majority of his life in Egypt. Again, Egypt. It seems like some of these great mystics spent a good amount of time in Egypt studying. And he practiced Sufism, which is Islamic mysticism. And it focuses on direct relationship with God, understanding existence through spiritual realization, and then they search for the life's meaning beyond like the religious narrative. So they're taking it above and beyond, I think. Sufi masters practice the summoning of jinns since they have a heightened spiritual state and allowed them to serve as the intermediates between spiritual and earthly realms, which I was talking about earlier with that book. Interestingly, it's a mixed bag when reading the biography of al-Buni. Although a lot's not known about him, it's weird because you see many Western occultists or magicians regard him as, or refer to him as a magician, but then you have all these Muslim scholars saying, no, he was not a magician. He didn't practice magic. He didn't do any of that. He just studied it. So you have this very staunch, opinion in the Muslim world, whereas the other ones are like holding him in high regard as a magician. So I thought that was important to mention that, you have this kind of bipolar reception of him.
Oh, I think there was like issues with that kind of with one or two of the people I'm gonna read that I think like they were kind of like praised, but then like at times like I think there's somebody I was gonna mention that I think like the Vatican has even banned like their books or the Catholic Church or something. That might have two people with something associated with that. Yeah, but it's like they ended up banning their books anyway. But
which is to me that's a promotion in my mind. Yeah. If a book gets banned, I'm buying it. And he studied cosmology, alchemy during a time when apparently it wasn't considered magic in the Arab world, and mysticism was super popular among the Muslims, and it was like one of the ways to achieve a state of unity with the divine. So it might have just been like more of a circumstance of like what was happening at the time. So what
I had also thought of too. I mean, I know this is like a stretch, but I think it was Blavatsky, and I think a few other people had even stated that like the hidden secrets you're actually still not supposed to really put out there. technically. I think there was something said like that. And like going back then when these books were getting banned, this is my opinion. I think people also were more intelligent then.
Oh, for sure.
So could this stuff have actually been easier understood then? And let's say like maybe there was actually too much in there that made sense to the common person then.
Well, remember we talked about
is
how
that why
graffiti?
they get banned from a church? Because they're like,
yeah,
there's too much in there. Don't read that. Don't read that.
No. I mean, like we showed how like even in graffiti people knew about alphanumeric systems. You know what I mean? They're like, can't let these common folk be summoning people. We still need them to pay dues every Sunday.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So al-Buni goes on to write...
Al-Bundy.
Al-Bundy.
Lieber al-Bundy.
Now I have, and now I have that song in my head. Break out into a song.
That was funny though. Before I was like, his wife was a redhead, his daughter was kind of slutty, and his son played the fool. I was like, what's up with al-Bundy?
I bet if you looked into it, there's a whole lot more there.
Oh, he had the dog too. Don't forget the dog.
That's right. Dog. Now, wasn't the song "Love and Marriage" by Frank Sinatra?
I know he sang that, but I don't know if he wrote it.
Or if it's the one that was used. It was probably.
Oh yeah, it was his. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay. I bet you there's a connection with that. I don't know why, but I think that. Okay. Shams al-Ma'arif, that was my best attempt, is also known as the Son of Knowledge or the Book of the Son of Gnosis. And it's described as both a grimoire on Arabic magic and a manual to achieve esoteric spirituality. So they refer al-Buni as a quasi-Kabbalistic Sufi sheikh who wrote the Shams during his time in Egypt. And even though the popularity of the Picatrix is, well known and it's super popular, it is said that the Shams is the book of magic more widely used and regarded as a more influential book of its type in the Arab-speaking world. And they've even compared it to Agrippa's book on occult philosophy. So I think that's a huge stamp of like, wow, it's something. So Shams has a total of 20 chapters. In the first couple of chapters, it explains the mysticism of symbolism, meanings, letters, and numbers, followed by magic squares, numerology of the Abjad numerals. And we begin to see that they use the Abjad numerals as a way to establish a relationship with the divine by using the numbers and letters, because they believe that it has a divine relationship to everything else that exists in the world. In the Shams, al-Buni indicates that by using the specific order and combinations of letters and numbers, geometric shapes, the practitioner can cause a magical effect powerful enough to influence reality, unlock secrets of the spiritual realm, of the supernatural realm, and influence inanimate objects. And I think they're referring to like jinns and stuff like that here. That's a big claim, I think.
Yeah.
The rest of the book covers astrological influences, religious and philosophical concepts, wisdom and rituals, natural theology, and secret properties, and the 99 names of God. But then you get to chapter 19, and which I found significant, 19 yeah. Because they go on about 19 in most of these texts, how it's a big deal in Islamic mysticism. So you get to chapter 19, and it's probably it's probably part of the book that's the most responsible for its controversy, because it actually discusses, as the article describes, the ultimate guide to witchcraft, talisman recipes, and each containing their own combination of letters, numbers, zodiacs, geometrical shapes, Quranic verses, hymns, and symbols. So it's like, they say it's not a recipe book, but some say, no, it's a recipe book. It tells you what to do. And so most of the, most of the slides that I'm going to show next are of chapter 19. I figured that would be the most interesting.
Not for nothing, if I was, I guess back then, well now, Maybe back then, again, people were just better at doing things because they didn't have stupid shit to occupy them with. To me, if I wanted to write a book like this and thought I was going to have to draw that stuff, I would never even do it. I can't draw that good.
Well, I think back then people were like...
You're making that circle, that would take me probably months because I would critique the shit out of it, thinking it's not perfect.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah, or I just screw it up easily, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would never... I'd give up. I would just be like, forget it.
It doesn't look right. I didn't like the colors. Yeah, no. It would have been a nightmare for me to finish. Yeah. The book contains tables, prayer charts, and numerical ciphers to assist with solving hidden messages in the text. Here, al-Buni theorized that the 28 letters of the Arabic letters used in the Quran all have numerical values. So this is where you see that the beginning of that theory, that, oh no, the Quran is coded and all of it has meaning. This is where you see it. This text is basically saying that it analyzed it, it found it, this is where it's at.
Hence why it's in the episode now.
Hence why it's in the episode, yes, exactly. And why I'm spending so much time explaining. Through elaborate charts using letters and numbers, al-Buni would later be credited as constructing magic squares based on the names of God and in accordance with planetary alignments, which reminds me of everything you were talking about at the beginning of the first episode. And they were doing it in
earlier in this.
Yeah.
If the dating is correct and all that stuff.
Correct. It is said that magic squares were already in use in places like Iraq and India centuries before the publication of the Shams. However, al-Buni's work was among the first cryptograms developed for Muslims, or Muslims only, because it was written, obviously, in Arabic. In so much that numerical charts were written onto the undershirts of soldiers in India. So they were even used like out in the streets. So yeah, okay.
Haven't we even come across? You might have showed it. Maybe you didn't show it. Like graffiti, almost kind of.
Yes, that was in Pompeii, where they were using alphanumeric codes as political signs, as a way to throw jabs to Nero, who was running for office, or I don't know. He wasn't running for office. I think he was assigned.
Like talking shit in ciphers.
I thought it was cool. That's the way to do it.
So they were trolling back then.
Yeah.
They were trolling with memes on walls.
That's awesome. And here we thought it's a new concept, and it's not.
Well, fuckers were doing that on walls back in the day. This ain't nothing new.
We're just recycling shit with bell bottoms and everything. Despite being popular, it has a reputation of being one of the most suppressed and banned books for much of Islamic history. Yet it's held in high regard for its legitimacy and use in the occult, and it's being read and studied into the present day. And I believe that there are some scholars in the U.S. of occult philosophy that are trying to translate it, write books on it, and I guess do an analysis on it. So,
that's another thing I have noticed, and I mean, I'm sure I've actually said this before in different ways, but when it gets to universities and colleges, the more and more I'm like researching on certain topics, the more I'm finding out how like there are a plethora of actual information on some really interesting shit. Yeah. And it's like, what the I don't know.
Well, if you don't want anybody to read it, just put it in a book, because nobody reads books anymore. I mean, it's true. They want to listen to a video or they want to hear it on a podcast, but nobody wants to read it.
There's like stuff that me and you have come across where it's like, yo, they're showing this in school lectures.
Yeah.
Like, do they even realize what the hell they're looking at right now?
Yeah. Well, like that guy who was explaining the Kabbalah, you're just like, wow, that's something that, I thought is something about secret societies or whatever, and he's just giving a lecture about it. Like, it was another day in June.
And it's like, and not even for nothing, but like, not to even sound like a dick, but it's just like, I'm like, yo, if you were to take some of those kids and like dump them in the middle of a bunch of like Instagram conspiracy theorists, they would even be like, yo, are you kidding me? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they'd even realize, like, you think that shit's silly, but
it's not. It's not. But and it's not
no. You have some kid who doesn't know anything about conspiracy theories probably yet.
Right.
They would be able to actually spit some real shit to these people that think they know everything.
if you look at it, it's not at no regular, community college, and nothing against community college by no means. It's no small university.
Oh no, yeah, they're all
big universities.
they're well-known places that you come across
that
which is
these
actually
people
not
come
surprising.
out of. And so when we say, well, are these big wig people, do they even know about this stuff? Well, hell, they're attending the lectures at these universities that are talking about it. They're getting an intro when the rest of us are not. I mean, just as whatever. So as I explained earlier in the beginning of the book, al-Buni wanted to place the hidden aspects of ancient wisdom along with esoteric knowledge in one book. And they considered esoteric knowledge as the secret gnosis, to be only understood by a small group of people. A large part of the book focused on mysticism, spirituality, occult practices, including numerology, which is the Abjad numeral system, alchemy, astrology, magic, and folk medicine. Like, they have instances where folk medicine is inserted within the text of the book, which I found pretty interesting as well. Towards the end of the book, the author combines all of these topics into a how-to to be used in rituals, talisman creation, or summoning the supernatural. I think that's probably what they didn't like, is that he was Bruce Lee in it. He was telling everybody how it's done, what's in the sauce, and you're like, nah, man, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't tell people that. So reception of the Psalms seems split down the middle, and I think we kind of beat this to a dead horse. But I think what it basically does is it's revealing the fault lines between Islamic mysticism and then religious narrative. And it's seeing where the two are getting from each other. And then, again, I think, personally, this is completely my opinion, I think it kind of takes out the middleman. If you read this book and you're well-versed and you can do it, what do you need to pay dues for? What do you need to go and pay homage to your imams or to your priests or to your rabbis or whatever? And I'm not saying that you become God or anything like that. I'm just saying you could grow it yourself in your backyard.
Not trying to say this is the same thing, but I guess I am actually. But I mean, I think he might have even mentioned shoe salesman, which is kind of funny, the whole al-Buni thing. But even with Aleister Crowley, with magic and theory and practice, his opinion was that, like, anybody from this book, if you even understand, like, that language. But then again, the books, people back then may have. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? The way that he spoke. But, the way it's written then and now is just hard to even understand. But according to him in that book, his intentions was so that anybody
could read it,
could understand magic. Because he did see, his opinion, it should be available to everybody. And it is. And, that's like, I even said that with a guest on. Magic experiences are not, you might see some people that maybe are a little bit more in tune, but nobody's more special than the next. Everybody still has, in my opinion, everybody has the same chance to do it, to experience that as the next person. There's no difference in somebody, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, it's...
But, like, according to him, that book was supposed to do that, which I guess, I don't know, cut out a middleman, maybe? I don't know.
I know, that's a phrase. I don't know why.
Not that I'm trying to, like, promote, like...
Yeah.
But I could see that, though, like, in a sense.
Yeah.
That cut out the middleman, too.
Well, and the thing is, because, like, remember when we talked about in the last episode about Greek isosophy and how Vatican came down in their Council of Nicaea, and they're like, anybody that does anything to do with isosophy is in direct violation of the state church and will be, I don't know, prosecuted, but, will be punished or whatever. And you see this here too, where Islam is like, absolutely not. This book has everything to do with magic. Magic is one of the 7 deadly sins. You're equating some of these jinns with God, and you're now, in communication when you should only be talking to God or through us. And I think that's it. You start to see that, and then you see that also. I don't know if you see it completely in Jewish mysticism, but you definitely see it in the Christian faith, and you definitely see it in the Islamic faith.
Yes.
So, yeah. But, that's one of the things with this book. And basically al-Buni described how, in terms of the 99 names of God, what the dimensions and the properties were of these alphanumerical systems, and how to manipulate them, how to use them. He also talked about the power associated with it, and how many times to recite something with a specific number that would grant you access to the knowledge or grant your prayer. Or, I mean, I think that's all definite, like no bueno for the higher ups. And then I think that was it for me. Yeah, I think that was it.
Yep, we're good. Awesome.
Okay.
All right. So, thank you very much. That was awesome.
Of course.
That was great stuff. It's hard to follow that up.
No, that's not true. That's not.
Well, I'm just going to I know we kind of explained this a little bit already, but I will kind of reiterate it a little bit about numerology, even though, again, that's a word that's technically fairly new, considering the stuff that we're showing is very new. Numerology is the belief in occult, divine, or mystical relationship between a number and one or more coinciding events. It is also the study of numerical value from an alphanumeric system of the letters in words and names. And I threw in here also the term arithmancy, or arithmancy, is derived from two Greek words, arithmos, meaning number, and I don't know if this is mantia, or however you say it, meaning divination. Arithmancy is basically the study of divination through numbers. Although the word dates to the 1570s, the word numerology is not recorded in English before 1907, which I think you said earlier. The 6th century BCE philosopher and mystic Pythagoras believed that numbers carried sacred codes and were divinely inspired and created. Some alchemical theories were closely related to numerology. For example, Persian Arab alchemist Jabir, I don't even know how to say this name, Ibn Hayy. And we had mentioned him earlier. We mentioned him in the last episode. And we had another one who was rather young, so they do also question if it was not a pen name, if I do remember correctly. And a little bit about him. Supposedly he died around 806 to 816, and he's the purported author of a ton of works in Arabic, often called the Jabirian corpus. The works that survive today mainly deal with alchemy and chemistry, magic, and Shiite religions philosophy. The original scope of the corpus was pretty vast and diverse. It covered a wide range of topics from cosmology, astronomy, and astrology. Also had medicine, pharmacology, zoology, and botany. Botany. I mean, that's even another thing.
They're all botanists.
If you even want to take the Voynich manuscript at, I guess, face value or drawing value.
Right.
That is all, half the book's plants to begin with, too. So,
I bet you it's a code.
Sure. No, like I said, I think at some point we'll be covering that and showing it as in parts of our
For
head.
sure.
To metaphysics, logic, and grammar. So there was a lot that this guy wrote. Jabir's works contain the oldest known systematic classification of chemical substances and the oldest known instructions for deriving an inorganic compound from organic substances, such as plants, blood, and hair, by chemical means. His works also contain one of the earliest known versions of the sulfur-mercury theory of metals, a mineralogical theory that would remain dominant until the 18th century. A significant part of Jabir's writings were informed by a philosophical theory as the science of the balance, which was aimed at reducing all phenomena to a system of measures and quantitative proportions. As early as the 10th century, the identity and exact corpus of works of Jabir was in dispute in Islam scholarly circles. The authorship of all these works by a single figure and even the existence of a historical Jabir are also doubted by modern scholars. Instead, Jabir is thought to have been a pseudonym used by an anonymous school of Shiite alchemists writing in the late 9th and 10th centuries.
Speaking of Shiites, that was the whole thing between the al-Buni and in the Arab world, is that they were going back and forth with their mystic texts. So just an insert on that.
Thank you. One of the things he did do, the 70 books, also called the Book of 70. This contains a systematic exposition of Jabarian alchemy. It is organized into 7 parts containing 10 treatises each, 3 parts dealing with the preparation of the elixir from animal, vegetable, and mineral substances, 2 parts dealing with the 4 elements from a theoretical and practical point of view, and 1 part focusing on the alchemical use of animal substances, and 1 part focusing on minerals and metals. It was translated into Latin by Gerard of Cremona under the title Liber de Septuaginta, or something like that. Probably screwing that up, but it seemed to, I guess, have been important enough for someone to try to transcribe it. Yeah, and that was back in the person who transcribed it died in 1187.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
That's a long time ago.
yes, and then we'll get on to somebody that I actually remembered from, I guess, my occult studies, coming across, people. And that would be Pietro Bongo, if I'm saying it correctly. He came from a noble family. He was born and raised in Bergamo, Italy. He died on September 24th, 1601, supposedly. He studied the mathematical arts of quadrivium, arithmetic and geometry, music theory and astronomy, and philosophy and theology, besides classical poetry and the occult sciences of magic and Kabbalah. So he was into it all. He mastered the Hebrew, Greek, and Latin languages. In his books, he tried his best to reconcile Pythagorean doctrine with Christian theology. That is another thing I do
That's
actually want to mention that I find interesting, and it really makes me wonder about Catholicism really being more of occultism. And it's something that I think we'll probably notice when we do get into covering some older grimoires later on down the road with the Occult Rejects or the NY Patriot show. Not sure which one yet, but eventually. A lot of them do have a lot of Catholicism mixed into it. A lot.
Very much so. Very much so. Very much so.
Well,
It almost reminds me of, like, side note, that, like here in like South Texas or whatever, how you see the intermix between the old Native American mythos and Catholicism. You don't know where one begins and the other one ends. I see that a lot with these grimoires.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. His major work, I'm going to screw this up, the Numerorium Mysteria, was, and that's, I got that up right there on the screen, was first published in 1591 and received an imprimatur, and that is a declaration authorizing publication of a book. The term is also applied loosely to any mark of approval or endorsement from the Catholic Church. So, got like stamp of approval by that.
We approve this message.
We approve this message. It's stupid. Yeah, that messed me up. That was good. The book explores the mystical significance of numbers, beginning with lengthy discourses on the number 1, 2, and 3, and continuing with shorter tracts on significant numbers later in sequence. Bongo uses a wide range of sources, including all pagan literature and philosophy of classical Greece, Rome, and early church fathers, and in the mainstream Catholic tradition of scholarship, and as well as very recent scholarship of his own day. So he seemed to have, I think, kind of like grabbed from different areas. One thing that I did want to go over, because I did mention before that he studied the mathematical arts of quadrivium, or however you say that. In case people are like, what the hell was that? I thought it was a little interesting. It is from the time of Plato through the Middle Ages. The quadrivium was a grouping of 4 subjects or arts, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, that formed a second curricular stage following preparatory work in the trivium, consisting of grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Together, the trivium and the quadrivium comprised the 7 liberal arts and formed the basis of a liberal arts education in Western society until gradually displaced as a curricular structure by the studia, I don't even know how to say this,
humanitarians or what? Yeah.
Plus, it's like underlined. It's telling me it's spelled wrong. So, and it's later offshoots, beginning with Petrarch in the 14th century. The 7 classical arts were considered thinking skills and were distinguished from practical arts such as medicine and architecture. These 4 studies composed the secondary part of the curriculum outlined by Plato in the Republic and described in the 7th book of that work. So I just thought that was interesting to know that, like, even stuff from back then that these people are into kind of has made its way, but I think just gone in the total opposite direction it was supposed to go in.
Yeah, no.
It's like dumbed down instead of enlightened.
No, it seemed like everybody was educated and they like majored in all these different subjects and they were fluent in so many different things. And then now it's like you can't even pass a math class.
Yeah, now you just go into liberal arts and turn into a socialist.
Holding signs on the street. Yeah.
Anyway, it's just so screwed up is that it's like they force you to have to do that.
Yeah. It's true.
You know, and especially, I mean, that's my experience I knowing with colleges out here and stuff. I know that, like, you know, pretty much any college, even if you went to it or whatever, it's like you're going to have to take a liberal arts first.
Yeah.
And it's
that's
like,
what they do
it's
for
like
us.
It's already like pushing, I don't know. I just sometimes wonder.
The humanities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On to the next person. One of my favorites in this, actually. Athanasius, I'm sure I'm screwing that up, but Athanasius Kircher. He was born on May 2nd in either 1601 or 1602 in Geisa, Buchonia, near Fulda, which I think this was Germany. He attended the Jesuit college in Fulda from 1614 to 1618 when he entered the society. He was taught Hebrew by a rabbi in addition to his studies at school. He studied philosophy and theology at Paderborn, but fled to Cologne in 1622 to escape advancing Protestant forces. I don't know what was going on then. From 1622 to 1624, Kircher was sent to begin his regency period in Koblenz, if I'm saying that right, as a teacher. This was followed by an assignment to Halligstadt, where he taught mathematics, Hebrew, and Syriac. Back in the day, 1600s, you got people out there who's teaching those 3. And people don't even know, like, we don't even know how to speak one language correctly.
I was just going to say,
what?
People don't even have
what
to know the only language that they
I'm like
speak.
thinking to myself, I'm like, you know how long it takes me to spell everything correctly in a text? It's like, I don't. He was ordained. People listening that have text conversations with me like, I know what he's talking. Of some reason, I have like deplorable Janet in the back of my head saying like, he ain't lying.
That's a shout out to her.
Yeah. He was ordained to the priesthood in 1628 and became professor of ethics and mathematics at the University of Wurzburg, where he also taught Hebrew and Syriac. Beginning in 1628, he began to show interest in Egyptian hieroglyphs. Kircher was also actively involved in the erection of the Pamphilj obelisk and added hieroglyphs of his design in the blank areas. Kircher made use of the Pythagorean principles to read hieroglyphs at this obelisk and used the same form of interpretation when reading scripture. Kircher had an early interest in China, telling his superior in 1629 that he wished to become a missionary to that country. Interesting. In 1667, he published a treatise whose full title was China Illustrata, which means China Illustrated. It was a work of an encyclopedia, pretty much, combining material from accurate cartography to mythical elements, such as study of dragons. Now, again, if it's occult, symbolism or whatever, might just be a misunderstanding. The work drew heavily on the reports of Jesuits working in China, in particular Michael Boehm and Martino Martini. Just wanted to make mention of that. I found that interesting that the Jesuits are going over to China.
Oh, they go everywhere.
Yeah. It's like the damn Mormons.
They're the upgraded Jesuits.
Our missions.
Yeah.
It sounds so cute and harmless.
Well, when you cloak it that way.
Kircher also was sent the Voynich manuscript in 1666. What a better year to do it. By Johannes Marcus Marcy, in the hope of Kircher being able to decipher it. In this Polygraphia Nova, 1663, Kircher proposed that it was a artificial universal language. That's all I really got out of what he thought about it. Kircher published Ars Magna Lucis et Ombre concerning the display of images on a screen using an apparatus similar to the magic lantern developed by Christian Huygens and others. Kircher described the construction of a lamp that used reflection to project images on the wall of a darkened room. Although Kircher did not invent the device, he improved it and suggested methods by which exhibitors could use the device. Much of the significance of his work arises from Kircher's rational approach towards the demystification of projected images.
It's like the beginnings of the holographic, technology. Of
or even
knowing it out.
Even knowing that, or if he's demystifying it, does that mean that people are mind-fucking people with it? People misunderstood what they're actually saying.
Yeah. Well, when you're saying projecting images and whatever, I'm thinking of the early experiments with the eye and trying to look at, how the lens worked.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's very interesting.
Well, here we go. Previously, such images had been used in Europe to mimic supernatural appearances. Kircher himself cites the use of displayed images by the rabbis in the court of King Solomon. Kircher stressed that exhibitors should take great care to inform spectators that such images were purely naturalistic and not magical.
So even back then, they were trying to say, oh, it's not magic. It's not magic. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Kind of like what's whatever still going on today. Or that's not what you think magic is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kircher, he also constructed a magnetic clock, which he explained in his Magnus, which came out in 1641. The clock had been invented by another Jesuit, Linus of Liege. Kircher's patron, I'm saying this correctly, Parisk, had claimed that the clock's motion supported the Copernican cosmological model, arguing that the magnetic sphere in the clock rotated by the magnetic force of the sun. Kircher's model disproved that hypothesis, showing that the motion could be produced by a water clock in the base of the device. The clock has been reconstructed by Caroline Borguru in collaboration with Michael John Gorman and is on display at the Green Library at Stanford University. So, I do think this guy has come out with some wild stuff too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The Mysurgia Universalis from 1650 sets out Kircher's views on music. He believed that the harmony of music reflected the proportions of the universe. The book includes plans for constructing water-powered automatic organs, notations of birdsong, and diagrams of musical instruments. One illustration shows the difference between the ears of humans and other animals. In Phrynergia Nova, 1673, Kircher considered the possibilities of transmitting music to remote places.
That's cool.
In 1673, this guy was talking about transmitting music and sound.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. Then we have here, I'm backtracking a little bit. This is the all-seeing eye, which was a kind of like a thing that was published by Manly and edited by Manly P. Hall. And he had an opinion on Athanasius Kircher, which you see right here. There is no doubt that Kircher was assisted by a group of very able specialists in various forms of scientific and philosophic research. He apparently superintended and edited the writings of these various men, and then, adding whatever remarks he felt would clarify the text, he just published the various works in a large number of massive tomes, folio, and in some case, intricately constructed books. A few containing movable charts and diagrams consisting of wheels which actively revolved upon the paper and similar curious devices. That's even like another thing, like some of the stuff this guy was doing, like, you know, it was pretty wild books back then.
Very advanced.
Oh, yeah, shit's spinning, you turning stuff. Kircher included in his researches such subjects as alchemy, Kabbalism, cryptography, and early geography. One of his books contains a most curious map of Atlantis, showing this continent as an island. There's no doubt that many of his volumes contain cryptograms, few of which have ever been deciphered. For in his research, he discovered many valuable items of arcane lore, which he could not safely have published except under the concealment of cryptography.
There you go.
There is much to indicate that the probability that Kircher was an initiated member of the Rosicrucian fraternity, which at the time included many eminent Catholic scholars in its ranks. Curious Rosicrucian emblems as watermarks in the paper of the books which Kircher published substantiate the theory that at least some of his works contain Rosicrucian secrets profoundly concealed under a various enigmatical figure. I think I can continue a little bit more about what he said about it. Yes. The most famous of Kircher's writings is the Oedipus Egypticus, or whatever you say this damn thing. A monumental achievement and usually found in 3 or 4 volumes, but sometimes appearing in 2 large folios. This work covers the religions and the philosophies of the ancient world, an analysis of mythologies, languages, arts, crafts, and sciences, and includes several remarkable attempts to interpret the hieroglyphs figures of the Egyptians. The volumes are illustrated with literally thousands of figures, in most cases well drawn. I love how he says the interpretations of the figures demonstrate Kircher to have been a mystic and a Platonist. Several excellent statements are found concerning Pythagoras and his mathematics. Hermes, Zoroaster, and Moses are also treated in an intelligent and inspired manner.
That's amazing.
So that's what he had to say about Athanasius Kircher, whatever you say his name. But I just find, he's somebody who was heavily into, numbers, cryptography.
Yes.
Huge into that. This is some of the stuff that I'm showing you up here, and it's even like, showing you breakdowns of him, like values of stuff. He was very much into the whole idea of values to letters and ciphers.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one. Who knows if that's big type of cipher thing, that wheel.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And most of these ciphers are in a circular pattern, which I find pretty particular.
Here's some other ones where it's showing, values to things, to symbols and letters. So this was a guy, he even had in his 1665 thing, he's got the square of abracadabra in there. You know, he's got the four. How do they call it? The magic square or four, whatever. The force. You know,
Yeah.
the magic square, the fourth square. He's got that in there. So, here was some of the stuff that he did with the maps. This is supposedly the one of Atlantis that he drew. I find that interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, he was even entertaining Atlantis. He's got the Coptic alphabet there, and values and stuff, and or kind of like, I guess, showing associations with other things.
Right.
Here's the map of China that he did.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, back then.
Yeah.
How the hell did you even know that?
I don't know. I would have copied and traced it off something and said I did it, but that's
how do you even?
That's extensive. I mean, you would have to look above.
That's
to
what
look
I'm getting
down. At. You know what I mean? Like it's. Yeah, I mean,
I just think it's kind of interesting in itself. Like, where the hell do we get maps from to begin with?
Yeah.
With that much,
it would only make sense to look from
know.
above.
Yeah,
but
whatever. I understand how, I guess you could draw your travels across the, against the land, but I don't know about all that. To tell you the truth.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All right, moving on. Some more stuff of his. Again, this is even the thing I think I was talking about: animal ears and regular ears, human ears.
Yeah.
The model of the Earth's internal fires. Thought this was interesting. There's the magnetic clock. And now we're into, since we had mentioned him so many times, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. Also, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa von Niesheim, whatever I'm saying that right. And he was born September 14th, 1486, and he died February 18th, 1535. He was a German Renaissance polymath, physician, legal scholar, soldier, theologian, and occult writer. Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy, published in 1533, was heavily influenced by Kabbalah, Hermeticism, and Neoplatonism. His book was widely influential among esoterics of the early modern period, and still is to this day, in my opinion. He was also condemned as heretical by the Inquisitor of Cologne. Agrippa was born in Nettesheim, near Cologne, to a family of middle nobility. Many members of his family had been in service to the House of Habsburg. Agrippa studied at the University of Cologne from 1499 to 1502, and they're saying that was from the age of 13 to 16. When he received the degree of Magister Artium. Now, a Magister of Arts, that's basically what that is, and that is abbreviated with M.A., M.A.A.M., or A.M. And that just sounds a lot kind of like the Freemasons, except that, the F and A and M.
Yeah, no, it does.
The degree is usually associated with that of a Master of Science. It is likely that Agrippa's interest in the occult came from his Albertist influence. Agrippa himself named Albert's Speculum as one of the first occult study texts. He later studied in Paris, when he apparently took part in a secret society involved in the occult. Can't find out which one exactly. In 1508, Agrippa traveled to Spain to work as a mercenary. He continued his travels through Valencia, the Baleares, Sardinia, Naples, Avignon, and Lyon. He served as a captain in the army of Maximilian I, Holy Roman Emperor, who awarded him the title of Ritter. I think it's kind of like knight. In the winter of 1509 to 1510, Agrippa returned to Germany and studied with Johannes Trithemius at Würzburg. On April 8, 1510, he dedicated the then unpublished first draft of the Occulta Philosophia on the occult philosophy, in English terms, to Trithemius, who recommended that Agrippa keep his occult studies secret. Fun fact, April 8th is also the first day of the Book of the Law. Agrippa followed Maximilian to Italy in 1511, and as a theologian attended the Schismatic Council of Pisa in 1512, which was called by some cardinals in opposition to a council called by Pope Julius II. He remained in Italy for 7 years, partly in the service of William IX, Marquis of Montferrat, and probably occupied in teaching theology and practicing medicine. During his time in northern Italy, Agrippa came into contact with Agostino Ricci and perhaps Paolo Ricci, and studied the works of philosophers Marsilio Ficino and Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, and he studied the Kabbalah. Side note, Giovanni, that I just mentioned, was an Italian Renaissance nobleman and philosopher. He is famed for the events of 1486, when at the age of 23, he proposed to defend 900 theses on religion, philosophy, natural philosophy, and magic against all other kind of church shit. He wrote the Oration on the Dignity of Man, which has been called the Manifesto of the Renaissance, and a key text of Renaissance humanism, and of what has been called the Hermetic Reformation. He was the founder of the tradition of Christian Kabbalah, a key tenet of early modern Western esotericism. These 900 Theses were first printed book to be universally banned by the church. I think it's just interesting to get an idea of a little bit of who the people they were influenced and hanging around with too. So.
Well, they mention Mirandola a lot in some of these texts when they'll cross-reference him for some reason, and I meant to look him up, but they mention him a lot.
And then in 1515, he lectured at the University of Pavia on the Pomander of Hermes Trismegistus. But these lectures were abruptly terminated owing to the victories of Francis I, the King of France. Again, I was talking about how he's really known for the 3 books of occult philosophy. I have these up on the screen showing some of it. And a little bit about it. The 3 books of occult philosophy is Agrippa's study of occult philosophy, acknowledged as a significant contribution to the Renaissance philosophical discussion concerning the powers of magic and its relationship with religion. The first book was printed in 1531 in Paris, Cologne, and in Antwerp, while the full 3 volumes first appeared in Cologne in 1533. Next slide. The 3 books deal with elemental, celestial, and intellectual magic. The books outline the 4 elements: astrology, Kabbalah, numerology, angels, names of God, the virtues and relationships with each other, as well as methods of utilizing these relationships and laws in medicine, scrying, alchemy, ceremonial magic, and origins of what are from the Hebrew, Greek, and Chaldean context. Agrippa's interpretation of magic is similar to the authors Marsilio Ficino, basically the people I mentioned before, and Johann Reuchlin's synthesis of magic and religion, and emphasize an exploration of nature. My opinion, I do think, and if there's people who are into ceremonial magic, have studied it or whatever, I just, a lot of people do look at this guy in the magic community as kind of being one of the OGs. So there's probably a reason for that.
Yeah.
Not saying that we're all getting it correct when we look at his stuff either, but, Mm-hmm. And here's just some of the slides. I think I wanted to show these again to at least show that this person was into, numerical value and symbols and value. Again, he's even showing the same planetary squares that we were just talking about earlier. That was in the 1300s in that book. Again, he's showing the same stuff in his.
Yeah.
Stuff that I even showed in the first episode again. You know, these things do pop up.
Well, they use them over and over.
Yes,
and they're using them for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some more stuff. I mean, these things almost look like his own languages and shit. And then we go, I figured might as well go to the person that he learned from, kind of. Johannes Trithemius was born Johann Heidenberg on the February 1st, 1462, and he died December 13th, 1516. He was a German Benedictine abbot and a polymath who was active in the German Renaissance as a, I don't even know how you say this word, how do you say it?
Lexicographer.
Yeah, lexicographer, chronicler, cryptographer, and occultist. He is considered the founder of modern cryptography, a claim also shared with Leon Battista Alberti. And he was also big into steganography, as well as the founder of bibliography and literary studies as branches of knowledge. He had considerable influence on the development of early modern and modern occultism. His students included Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa and Paracelsus, however you say his name. There are theories, and I do want to mention this, there are theories that Megan covered the Arbitel with me previously in the past. She covered it pretty well, how she also theorized that he may have written the Arbitel, which is another well-known grimoire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so.
Interesting.
Not that Johannes did, but that Paracelsus did, that he was the one who did. When Johannes was still an infant, his father, Johann von Heidenberg, died. And then his stepfather, whom his mother Elizabeth married 7 years later, was hostile to education, and Johannes could only learn in secret. He learned Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. When he was 17 years old, he escaped from his home and wandered around looking for good teachers, traveling to Trier, Cologne, the Netherlands, Heidelberg. He studied at the University of Heidelberg. One of the things that he's known for, I thought this was kind of like an interesting, funny one to kind of cover. Trithemius had a reputation as a necromancer. The Faust legend is strongly based on a legend involving Maximilian, his first wife, Mary of Burgundy, and Trithemius. Throughout his 1507 account, Trithemius was the first author who mentioned the historical Dr. Faustus, or Johann Faust of Nittlingen. In a letter he wrote to the polymath Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, he appeared to criticize the vanity of Faust, who had inferior skills and went against the teachings of the church. Being summoned to the emperor's court in 1506 and 1507, he also helped to prove Maximilian's Trojan origins. In the 1569 edition of his Tischreden, Martin Luther writes about a magician and necromancer understood to be Trithemius, who summoned Alexander the Great and other ancient heroes, as well as the emperor's deceased wife, Mary of Burgundy, to entertain Maximilian. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Who knows? And, see, this is, again, when you have two people that are huge on Ciphers, and this guy's like, the god of this shit, the OG of this stuff, how do you know if these stories are supposed to be taken as literal?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're supposed to be running it through Cipher full,
I think, yeah, it might very well be.
Or, parts of it. Something. Who knows? There might be some play on this. Oh, man, where was I? In his 1585 account, Augustin Lerchheimer writes that after Mary's death, Trithemius was summoned to console a devastated Maximilian. Trithemius conjured a shade of Mary who looked exactly like her when alive. Maximilian also recognized a birthmark on her neck that only he knew about. He was just distraught by the experience, though, and ordered him to never do it again. An anonymous account in 1587 modified the story in a less sympathetic version. The emperor became Charles V, who, despite knowing about the risk of black magic, ordered Faustus to raise Alexander and his wife from death. Charles saw that the woman had a birthmark, which he had heard about. So, again, back to the birthmark. Later, the woman in Goethe's Faust became Helen of Troy. The story of Maximilian, Mary of Burgundy, and the abbot Johannes Tritham later appeared as one of Grimm's tales.
Wow.
I tried looking for that. I mean, I couldn't find it, but so
That's interesting.
yeah. And here we're going to get into one of his books that I thought was really interesting to cover. And I remember this book from back in the day, going through grimoires or just old books and looking into stuff with like ciphers or associations and values. Steganographia?
Yeah.
I don't know, right? I mean,
That's a long word.
yes, Steganographia. Trithemius' most famous work, Steganographia, was written around 1499 and published in Frankfurt in 1606. He was placed on the Index Librorum Prohibitorium in 1609 and removed in 1900. This book is in 3 volumes and about magic, specifically about using spirits to communicate over long distances. Since the publication of the decryption key to the first 2 volumes in 1606, they have been known to be actually concerned with cryptography and steganography. It's real big right here again. Until recently, the 3rd volume was widely still believed to be solely about magic, but the magical formula have now been shown to be covert text for yet more cryptographic content. However, mentions of the magical work within the 3rd book by such figures as Agrippa and John Dee still lend credence to the idea of a mystic magical foundation in the 3rd book. Robert Hooke suggested in the chapter of Dr. Dee's Book of Spirits that John Dee made use of Trithemian steganography to conceal his communication with Queen Elizabeth. Amongst the codes used in this book is and this is something I want to cover, next one, is the Ave Maria cipher, where each coded letter is replaced by a short sentence about Jesus in Latin.
That's crazy.
Yep.
That's insane.
So these people that screw around with numbers and cryptography and ciphers,
I mean, they were so
something's
fluent,
up
they're
with this
making
stuff.
their own stuff. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yep. And then we'll go on to this one, which you brought to my attention. Oh, here's just some more of kind of showing the site. I thought these were interesting, like ciphers and stuff he did in his book.
Yeah.
Then we're going to get to I don't even know how you say this book. Kitab Shok al-Mustaham, or something like that. The long-desired, fulfilled knowledge of occult alphabets, or occult alphabets, by, and this is even another thing I think it might be questionable, Ibn Washhia. That was supposedly around 863 CE. The long-desired, fulfilled knowledge of occult alphabets, also known in English as ancient alphabets, is a hermetic discussion of the esoteric meaning of various scripts and ciphers, both real and fictitious. It is written perhaps by Ibn, like I said before, also known as Abu Bakr, Ahmed bin Ali, who lived in the 9th and 10th centuries. He wrote a number of books on hermetic philosophy, toxicology, magic, and the occult. This includes Nabatean agriculture, which the author of the Picatrix openly drew from. And the Picatrix is that's something that I think was going to be one of those books I'm eventually going to cover.
I believe it's an Arabic
Yes,
grimoire,
which is why I
isn't
want
it?
to get into it. Yes, yeah. I even think the whole thing with the mansions of the moon and how everything's with the moon, very interesting. He was the first historian to decipher ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs by relating them to the contemporary Coptic language. While some have argued that the text is a Renaissance forgery based on Protomus Coptus by the 17th century German Jesuit Athanasius Kircher, most scholars agree that it is a genuine 9th century Hermetic account. I do think it's funny how they are saying, no, it's Kircher's, Getting back to somebody I just talked about.
Yeah.
It's worth noting that Ibn contributions were well known among Arab Egyptologists and in Europe, including Kircher, who built upon some of his findings anyway. According to Jaco Hamin and Tilla, Kitab Shak, however you say this guy's name, may have been authored by Hassan ibn Faraj, an obscure descendant of the Haranian Sabian scholar, who claimed to have merely copied the work in the year 413, which would have been 1022 AD. The book deals with, I've seen a couple of different numbers for this. The book deals with 89. I think you saw 80-something. I've seen 93. The book deals with, I'll just stick with the 89, ancient languages and their writings in comparison in Arabic. Below, and this is just a small list, I took out most of them, but you have the Kufic alphabet, you have the Indian alphabet on 3 different sorts, the Syrian alphabet, the old Nabatean alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, the Greek alphabet, the alphabet of Hermes, the alphabet of Plato, the alphabet of Pythagoras, the alphabet of Socrates, of Aristotle, the red alphabet invented and used by the philosopher Magnus, the talisman alphabet invented by Greek philosopher, I don't even know how to say that, not even going to try to, the mysterious alphabet invented by Halosh, the Greek philosopher who used it in his books, the alphabet of Hermes Abu Tat, the philosopher, the alphabet of Saturn, the alphabet of Jupiter, the alphabet of Mars, the alphabet of the Sun, all the alphabet of Taurus under the influence of Mars, the alphabet of Aries under the influence of Mars, the alphabet of King Kimas. So this guy, tons. The alphabet of the pharaohs, the oldest Chaldean alphabet he has in there, supposedly.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And this is from one of his things. In this section on hieroglyphics used to express worlds relative to animal actions and affections, Washia includes a mysterious figure which he briefly explains. It is expressive of the most sublime secret. I even think like Crowley's even used that phrase. Called originally Bahumid and Karuj, or Kaf, or the secret of the nature of the worlds, or the secret of secrets, which I've heard used, or the beginning and return of everything. This text remains undiscovered, and Washia doesn't explain what it means. But Athanasius Kircher discusses it at great length in his 1636 work, Prodromus Coptus, the Coptic or Egyptian forerunner. The figure derives from the Bembeen tablet, or the Mensa Isaica, or whatever, the Isaic tablet. An elaborate tablet of bronze with enamel and silver inlay. The tablet is now regarded as of Roman rather than Egyptian origin, dating to sometime to the 1st century. Apparently, the winged figure is holding a tablet inscribed with Coptic Egyptian characters representative of the 4 elements which Kircher associates with unity of all things. The drawing represents the connection between the macrocosm and microcosm. According to Kircher, it depicts a scarab beetle with the head of Horus. The sublunary demons who traffic between the high and low. This would explain why the figure was sacred or representative of the beliefs of the Haranian Sabians an astral cult who preserved the ancient practices of Mesopotamians. They believed that all events in the terrestrial realm were produced by the configuration of the planets, and that each planet and celestial sphere was animated by souls, basically. The power of the spirits could be harnessed to impact change in this world through ritual, which is basically what planetary magical is. You know?
Yeah.
Elemental magic, you can start pulling on the elementals of planets. You know, by the power of his own soul, like the celestial souls, he would transcend his humanity and command movement of the heavenly spheres.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is some of the stuff that's out of that book. You know, again, there's that symbol up in the corner that's on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, you know, here's like all, you know.
The symbol.
Yeah,
the
and I guess like, you know, these all the different. Again, you remember we were saying the alphabets, all these people.
Yeah.
You know, and then again, like, are those like these like secret ciphers for these people, or these codes for these people, or is like that alphabet like were people using these things then, and like we just had no idea about it?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, were there groups of actual people who like used it?
I would say yes. I would say absolutely yes.
Uh-huh.
And every time you went in to, like, whenever they did these, you know, magic spells or not magic squares, magic squares, and they did all of this rituals, they gained more information on more sigils to use. Kind of like OA, like they went in and they found another movement, and then they could come back and put the movements together. And so people were going in and out of these realms to get more and more sigils.
You know,
yeah,
me and you were even talking about that, and I've even wondered with like dancing and like, you know, performances. You know, you could be easily dancing in these shapes and spelling stuff out, and nobody would have the faintest idea.
No.
I have no idea.
Mm-mm.
I mean, Michael Jackson could have been doing that shit for all we know.
Or YMCA.
Yeah, right? I mean, these people could have been like drawing out Hebrew letters, just Hebrew letters in their own.
Right.
I mean, how would you?
Like, you're tapping into an actual vestige of the algorithm in the matrix by constructing your body in a certain way and aligning the energy in a manipulative form. You never know.
I mean, like, if someone told me that if they did stuff like that during their rituals, I would not be surprised. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could see it making sense. So, I just wonder.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. And the amount of advancements that were made in this small, I mean, look at all these books that came out of, 9th century all the way to 13th century, and the advancements that were made. And then now you have the Renaissance in the 14th century that are making all these was it because of these people?
If this stuff is like legit, and if there's actually like, you know, true like science and knowledge behind this stuff, and, you know, all that numerical values, shapes, geometry, occultism, magic, you know, all that stuff. I mean, I don't understand, like, well, how has people gotten dumber? Myself included.
I think on purpose. I think it's on purpose. It has to be.
Like, this shit is so old.
Mm-hmm. And they knew so much. Not only were they, you know, fluent in different languages, they knew about math, science, medicine, theology of any type. It was expansive. Their knowledge was expansive. And it wasn't just one person. It was many people. And they made so many contributions. I mean, even one book had so many contents in it. It wasn't just, you know, a how-to on beekeeping. It was like a how-to on all keeping, you know? So, yeah, I think we've de-evolved. Not evolved, but devolved. Yeah. As a people.
Sure. Something happened. Definitely. You know, and that, like, I have said, which I think is kind of why I thought this was important to cover. You know, I'm just repeating myself again. But, like, again, I do question, like, do we are even understanding or speaking our language correct? You know, or is it understood differently to other people?
Yeah.
You know? But that is the end of this episode. That went great. Perfect timing, too. I wanted to hopefully keep it around an hour and a half, and that's exactly what we did. That was smooth as hell. Thank you very much, Lisa. Definitely getting a hang of this, and I have to thank her. Because prior to this, I was working with screenshots. It was a mess. And, thanks to Lisa, I've actually got my shit together a little bit. I'm idolizing documents. I'm actually, writing notes and scripts for myself and throwing images up on slides, which I think look better than showing them on StreamYard, which is exactly why I do it, too. But there isn't as less of a image, decay. It just looks like shit through StreamYard. But thank you very much. I thought that went smooth, and again, I guess the way that I'm doing it now also helps. So thank you for bringing some sort of formality to the Occult Rejects, the way we do our research now, because it was surely a mess prior, but we still made it happen.
No, it was good. Yeah, it was still really good.
Yeah. The next episode, it's going to be the Ciphers. We're going to go into some of these old ciphers.
Super interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and that is even another thing. I didn't really get into it really too much, I guess, because it really all depends on what you're into. But even with Gematria, certain sites you can go to, they have tons of different ciphers that you can run it through.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, I really only screw around with the really three major ones, but I know other sites that do, and it's just all those ciphers. Is there something to it? Because it is interesting when sometimes you see people who are into this stuff and they'll use all these different ciphers, and it's you'll get not so much matching, but you'll see interesting neither numbers or phrases that almost coincide anyway.
Right.
So. But the next episode, Ciphers, I'm looking forward to that. I do think they'll give some credence to how maybe we don't truly understand everything that we're looking at.
Well, some of the stuff you found, how some of the writings was written in ciphers, and no one even really talks about that it was written in a cipher. And people are reading it in an English lit, oh, that's amazing. I don't really know what he's talking about.
You could even toss the Book of the Law into that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's telling you there's a cipher, right? I mean,
well, if all these religious texts are kind of coded, obviously a cipher exists. Is it true of all religious texts across the planet? Obviously in Western civilization, but it seems like they were all into it.
I think so.
Yeah.
I definitely think so. I think that's ways of them putting out stuff that's part of being in the club.
Yeah.
The cipher.
I think so. Yeah.
All right, so that is the end of part 2. Thank you very much again, Lisa. Mm-hmm. Ciphers in the next one. Check out all the links in the bottom. Keep an eye out for the Spiritual Gangsters Clown World Weekly going live. I think every Tuesday around 10:30. Keep an eye out for that. I don't know when this is coming out, so I'm probably wasting my time. But I think around Halloween, if this hasn't come out yet, it might have came out after the fact. There might be some extra episodes out on the NY Patriot show. So, keeping up with the Halloween theme and stuff, weird stuff, paranormal, whatever. So keep an eye out for that. Be some extra episodes on that end. And that's about it. And until the next one, everybody be well.